That's a big minaret. Burn the city. Leave the minaret.
You're watching Vagabrothers.
And this is Uzbekistan. For a weary traveler on the Silk Road, what could be more important than water? Welcome to Bukhara, the holiest city in Central Asia and a major center of civilization since the 6th century BC, in large part thanks to these ponds known as hows.
Once used for washing, drinking, and socializing, these ponds were connected by canals all across the city. But by the 19th and 20th century, it was starting to get kind of nasty. The water got stagnant, they became a source of communicable diseases, kind of logical when you're washing and drinking from the same water. And then the Soviets came, filled them all in, and this is one of the last ones in the city. But they do have these little camels that you can sit on. It's kind of fun.
As an oasis on the Silk Road, this had the first mosque in Central Asia. It became a major center of learning with over 200 universities and the most scholars after Baghdad.
It was known as the City of 1,000 Merchants, and it's home to Central Asia's oldest Jewish community. And to be completely honest, it reminds me of Tatooine. Where are the droids?
Okay, so here in Bukhara, a lot of the trading is like centered under these gigantic domes. It's low season right now, so a lot of shops are closed, but there's still a lot of cool stuff. Right here in this one, they sell a lot of men's headwear. Hats are popular with guys because as an Islamic country, most of the women were wearing hijabs, and so hats are more for men. But Alex has found some musical instruments over here, which is gonna start jamming.
You're the loudest person in Central Asia.
Right
It's too quiet here. First and foremost, what's the connection between Bukhara and rugs?
In the world, there were 5 big schools of carpets, and one of the most biggest trading places was Bukhara with the carpets of Bukhara. Okay, so there were Persian rugs, there were Indochina, there were Turkish, Caucasian. It was like more like a brand, let's say it this way. Yeah, Bukhara was very famous with the carpets of Bukhara because of its technology.
I live in a house that has hardwood floors. I like my hardwood floors. And as a person who doesn't really own carpets or rugs, I've always wondered why they're so expensive. Can you explain why?
Because 85% money you pay for the carpet is the labor.
Got it.
Okay, a handmade carpet may take minimum of 3 months,
Wow.
like a newer one, because they need to set up the loom first, and it may take years, a few 3-4 girls, like
So one of these big ones?
big ones, yes.
3
So
to
it
4
also-
years.
Yeah, it depends on material, silk or wool, number of knots per square centimeter, which means quality, density, and the design, how intricate, colors. And carpets in Bukhara, in the world, they used to buy not only for heating or things like this, but also it was like an investment, and until now it's the same. You buy the carpet, if it's a real handmade good carpet, it passes from generation to generation.
And it grows in value.
And it grows in value, of course.
Even with whatever discounts, I've realized I've got champagne taste and beer income. Unless we do an episode of Basic versus Baller here and I win the Baller, probably not going to buy a carpet on this trip. These ones here are in the $40,000 to $50,000 range. I really love the details and the kind of faded look that go really well with modern houses. This one here has been dyed with saffron. That's one of the most expensive and luxurious seasonings for food. It's very, very rare, and they use it to dye an entire carpet to give it this sort of saffron colored tint. And this one right here, this is about 50,000 bucks. I mean, the geometrical designs, the floral patterns, beautiful colors, these dyes are all local from indigo, and it is overall really, really nice and worth the price.
Well, we are kind of navigating the back streets of Bukhara. Pretty incredible though, the walls on some of the older buildings are still like wattle and daub, which is essentially mud and hay. We are heading to a synagogue. Bukhara has one of the oldest populations of Jews in Central Asia, and we're gonna have a unique experience and some dinner. This synagogue was built in the late 1700s and it was renovated in the mid 1800s, but in 1938 Stalin declared that the synagogues needed to close, so they were closed until 1991 when Uzbekistan became independent from the Soviet Union and the synagogue was renovated to its current state.
So people are starting to arrive after work for the service, and we've got this beautiful meal in front of us. There's a lot of pickled varieties of like beets, carrots, cucumber, potato salad.
Some fritters,
yeah.
Some fruit, and of course, Coca-Cola.
Not to mention kosher vodka. So this will be interesting. I think we have a main course coming after this, but for now, I think it's time to sample some of these salad.
L'chaim tuin.
L'chaim.
Cheers. Cheers. Thank you. We have just finished the meal and we're sitting here at a table in a synagogue in Central Asia during Hanukkah, and we are sharing a meal with people of the Jewish faith, people of Islam, and people of Christianity, and I think that it's just a very unique, amazing moment for all of us here.
История бухарских евреев сегодня практически очень много есть версий. Вот одна из версий, что мы находимся на территории Средней Азии, в частности, значит, порядка около 2000 лет. Отсюда и трактовка, значит, определения евреев как европейские евреи, то есть ашкеназийские, это значит немецкие евреи. И сефаради, испанские евреи. Эти два вида, условно говоря, приобрели, значит, впитали в себя культуру тех стран, в которых находились. Но стержень всегда оставался за Торой. Вот, то есть у нас все это едино, мы практически, если по большому счету, все выполняются обряды, значит, законы, чтение, все диетично.
This is the Ark. It's a 5th century citadel, and it's been a point of geopolitical conflict for centuries. You know, when we think of the stands, we often think of the Cold War, you know, the US versus the Soviet Union, but this place really got to a famous moment in history during what was known as the Great Game. The British were conquering India, they were pushing up, and they had just invaded Afghanistan, which is right next door. Meanwhile, the Russians, the Tsars, were pushing down through Central Asia, and they met here in a conflict that would make headlines around the world. The Great Game is the nickname for the geopolitical struggle between the Tsars of Russia and the British Empire, which by the 1800s stretched all the way around the world and was pushing up from India all the way to Afghanistan, which is right next door. The Tsars were worried, and so were the local emirs here in Uzbekistan. And so the British sent Colonel Stoddart of the British East India Company here to reassure the local emir, whose nickname was the Butcher. Unfortunately, things went wrong thanks to a couple mistakes Stoddart made that led him to be the subject of newspapers around the world. Here's what went down. Even though Colonel Stoddart brought a message from Queen Victoria saying that the British would not invade the kingdom, he made 3 fatal mistakes that would cost him his life. First, he rode his horse all the way up into the citadel, something that only the emir was allowed to do. They let that slide. But then he also didn't bring a gift, common courtesy anywhere. And third, he turned his back on the emir, a major breach of protocol that he was certainly warned about. All of this reeked of arrogance, and the emir threw him into a torture chamber known as the Bug Pit. This is the Bug Pit, 6.5 meter deep hole with an iron grid on top, and the guards would come by and chuck scorpions, spiders, and all other things that go bump in the night, basically making the worst form of solitary confinement imaginable. Stoddart was down here for a full year by himself until the Queen sent a second guy, Connolly, to come get him. He was also chucked in the pit, and both were executed 4 years later because Queen Victoria never sent a response to the emir's letter. That's a pretty crappy way to go. What could inspire mercy in the heart of Genghis Khan? The guy literally conquered everything between China and Europe, destroying everything in his path, except for this minaret.
Behind me is the Kalan Minaret, a 49-meter tower of baked brick, nicknamed the Tower of Death. Why, you might ask yourself? Well, over the centuries, it's been used as an observatory for the call to prayer, but also for executions. Think of it as an Uzbek version of the moon door in the Tower of Erie. But don't worry, nobody's been pushed out in 98 years.
What a view. Now this place was even taller when Genghis Khan arrived. 11 meters are still buried underground. And according to legend, it was so tall that when he arrived here, he took a look all the way to the top, and it was so big, it knocked his hat backwards onto the floor. They also say that he spared this tower even though he destroyed the rest of the city because he used it as a landmark while riding back and forth across Asia. Either way, we somehow got the backstage ticket to come all the way to the top of the tower, so do not attempt it home, but do enjoy this marvelous view. So finishing off the day, as we started it, this whole place is built around water, and we are going to have a hammam experience. This is kind of like a traditional Islamic spa, and basically there's a marble room in there that's been operating since the 16th century. You steam, you get washed, you get rubbed down, and it's a unique experience. So let's get changed, switching to GoPro. What a fascinating place. Bukhara is beautiful, it's got tons of history, and I really had a great time here.
It's kind of like that broke down palace beauty, you know, it's obviously seen better days, but it's beautiful in the fact that like when you come here, it definitely feels like time travel. It feels like you're taking a step back in time to a different world, a different universe, when this place was quite literally at the center of the world.
I really enjoyed having dinner at the synagogue with the Bukhari Jewish community. I mean, the Jewish diaspora is something that's really fascinating because there's these core traditions that everyone has maintained, but they've also adopted local traditions as well. And so to come to Central Asia to see one of the oldest Jewish communities in this part of the world was fascinating.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was like we were sitting at a table breaking bread with the Jewish faith, the Islamic faith, Christians. It was just a really cool moment of like everybody getting along, everybody having a good time, and like sharing insight and perspectives. So
What was your favorite thing?
climbing to the top of the minaret was amazing. I mean, what a perspective, what a crazy opportunity. Nobody really gets to do that, you know. There's not a lot of people going up there. There were like the carcasses of birds because a peregrine falcon lives up there, and it just felt like a moment from Assassin's Creed, honestly.
It was beautiful too, especially at night. The lights really illuminated the details on the tower and made you realize just how fascinating it was. And it's just like this place has got tons of amazing crafts, like from the stonework there to the rugs that we saw. Everything here has been really beautiful.
Yeah, so if you guys like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel if you have not already. If you're interested in Uzbekistan, then stay tuned because we still have a couple more episodes to go in this series.
And we're going in some serious time travel next, so stay tuned. And as we always say, stay curious, keep exploring, and we'll see you on the road.
Peace. What's up everybody, I'm Alex.
I'm Marko.
And you are watching Vagabrothers. And in this episode, we'll be exploring one of the most unique places on Earth, the Aral Sea.
We spent the last week traveling to the Silk Road cities of Uzbekistan, and they were all beautiful. But now we're traveling to the northwestern corner of the country to experience one of the worst ecological disasters on Earth.
The Aral Sea was once the fourth largest inland sea. Now, it's a giant desert bed full of rusting ships and broken dreams. What happened?
To find out, we're hopping in these trucks and driving the last stretch of the road from Nukos all the way to the water's edge. You're watching Vagabrothers, and this is the journey to the Aral Sea.
Well, we have been driving for essentially the entire day. We left Khiva at 7 a.m. this morning. We drove to Nukus, switched vehicles into 4x4 vehicles, and now we have just arrived to Moynak. This is essentially kind of the end of the road. It used to be right on the water. It's no longer right on the water, but we're staying at a little guest house. We're gonna get some food, kind of get a lay of the land, and then go and take a look at the ship graveyard.
Okay, so we're sitting down to lunch right here. We got some pickled food, some stew with lamb and potatoes, and some tea. This house belongs to a family that used to work in the fishing industry, but like a lot of the local population, without that industry here, they're pivoting towards tourism.
We've been looking on Google Maps to just try to put into perspective where we are, because we're kind of at the convergence of all of the stands, but we're in a place, it's called the Autonomous Republic of Karakalpakstan, and if you do look on the map, it's pretty incredible because we are like smack dab in the middle of Central Asia.
Well, I'm standing now at what used to be the bottom of the Aral Sea. There used to be 100 ships here, but the mayor cleaned up the place and sold the rest for scrap metal. So there's only about 10 that remain right here. But this is really a surreal experience because the water used to be going as far back as you can see, and now it's this kind of bizarre playground. To answer our question about how the Aral Sea disappeared in just a few decades, we have to start with the story of the American Civil War.
In stepped the Russian Tsars, who saw the perfect opportunity to fill the gap in the market with their newly conquered lands in Central Asia, which could be perfect for growing cotton if only they could get water into the desert. So they diverted some of the rivers flowing into the Aral Sea without too much of an impact on the environment.
After the Communist Revolution, Lenin advocated for turning the area into a self-sufficient cotton belt of the Soviet Union, saying irrigation will do more to revive the area and regenerate it and make the transition to socialism more certain.
And it worked for a while. In the 1930s, Uzbekistan was exporting cotton worldwide, and the area prospered. There were plenty of fish in the sea. Tourists actually came and visited the beaches here, and the Soviet Union was the world's leading cotton producer, with over 70% of it coming from Uzbekistan, irrigated by the rivers that flowed into the Aral Sea.
Then in the 1950s, the Soviet government attempted an overly ambitious irrigation project that tipped the ecological scales too far. Between 1960 and 1980, the water levels here dropped 20 full meters, leaving the Moynock fishing fleet marooned and leaving the remaining seawater so salty that all the fish died. By 1984, industry in the area had dried up just like the lake, leaving Moynock and its fishing fleet a ghost town.
It's just really hard to imagine that this was floating at one time and that where we're standing was a body of water. All right, well, now we have swung over to the museum, the Ecological Museum, just to see what used to be here.
So here behind me are some images from NASA that show how the sea has dried up over the years. As you can see, it not only shrinks in size, but also color. It's actually 100,000 tons of salt that's been mixed up with all the chemicals and fertilizers and pesticides that they used in irrigating the cotton fields that have made it basically poisonous, and that goes up in the atmosphere and it's been spread all the way around the world.
We are on a mission to get a bottle of vodka to go with dinner because it's cold and there's not a lot to do in ways of entertainment out here. So vodka will have to check all the boxes.
It's cold as hell. We are here in the middle of December, so it's a very, very cold time of year. There's no clouds in the sky, so there's really not that much heat trapped here. It's gonna get dark fast, stay dark until about 8 o'clock in the morning. So you can tell why places like this have a problem sometimes with drinking, because it's one of the only things you can do down here. So.
Well, it is 8:18 in the morning. It's minus 8 degrees Celsius outside. And we've piled back into the cars and we're leaving Moynock. And we're gonna be essentially driving into what was once the Aral Sea. The goal today is to reach what's left of the sea. It's over 100 kilometers away.
just finished driving across the bottom of the basin and came up this mountain, and it just gives some perspective on how much water has vanished. Because at the bottom of the basin, we were 60 meters underwater, and now even coming up top, we still would be underwater.
Yeah, it's insane to think that, like, this landscape, when you look at it now, you could never imagine that there was water here ever. But to know that there were, you know, there was over 100 feet of water is just pretty mind-boggling, because there's nothing out in here now. Like, we've seen, you know, a skull of like a bull on the side of the road. We've seen like a flock of birds, and that's pretty much it.
When you think about it, it's really not that different than, you know, like the Grand Canyon or some other places in the United States that used to be underneath an ocean. It's just that it happened so much faster, and it happened directly because of mankind. And you can see, I found this on the bottom of the ocean, on the bottom of the ground over there. And this is something that, you know, you find in other parts of the world that used to be under the ocean, but in those other places, the ocean was there, you know, around the time of the dinosaurs, like hundreds of millions of years ago. And here, it's only 50 years ago, 60 years ago. Like, our driver was saying that when he was a kid, he used to come out here and go swimming back at the fishing village we used to be at. And locals there definitely remember it being a normal port, and yet now it's so far from that.
Now we're starting to climb up into like a plateau. You can see geologically like lots of like levels of sediment that's been deposited over, you know, the millennia. But we're gonna continue driving. Supposedly we're gonna go into some canyons and then eventually into what's left of the sea.
This behind me is what's left of the Aral Sea. It's now 1/10 of the size that it once was. Originally the 4th largest inland sea in the world. The situation today is not looking good. In order to fix this problem, they would have to stop producing cotton here in Uzbekistan, which is a major part of the economy, and it does not look like that's going to happen. Without diverting water away from cotton production, most experts believe that the sea will dry up entirely by 2025. The sand that's left here is toxic. It's going up into the air and spreading across the entire atmosphere throughout the world, and locals here have a higher rate of cancer, tuberculosis, and anemia because of the pesticides used in growing cotton.
Well, we've made it to the water's edge, and the first thing that I've noticed is the smell. It smells pretty bad. Like, it's salty, super salty smell, but also kind of like what it smells like when something's dying and like decomposing. There's also this really large, like, gyrating foam. There's just foam coming off the edge of the sea. I've never really seen anything quite like it. It's very bizarre. We've made it. We're here at the edge of what's left of the Aral Sea, and I feel sad. I feel really sad. I mean, this is like, I love the ocean, I love lakes, I love water, and to see the magnitude and the scale of this environmental catastrophe, and to be on the edge of what's left of this lake and smell it. It smells so bad, and it's crazy. It's all done by man, you know? It really puts a lot of stuff into perspective nowadays.
Yeah, you can see the satellite photos show how much the lake has receded. This is really the only part that's left. I think as the first place that I've really been to as kind of a dark tourism theme, I think it's weird to come to a place and kind of be looking at someone else's situation and be able to be here for a day and then leave. But I think it makes you empathetic for the people who live here, and it's also a situation I think that affects everyone.
I think that when we drove in here, there were these two like handmade airplanes that were kind of hobbled together from pieces of driftwood and a nail, and then kind of like planted into the earth. I just found those planes like really symbolic. Like whoever made those was dreaming of hopping on an airplane and leaving this place, and I just feel really humble and lucky to be able to do that.
But it's a crazy place to wrap up our time here in Uzbekistan, because this is like so different than the rest of our trip. We have seen some beautiful places. Uzbekistan is a lovely country. We've gone to some historic cities, and I think the theme that you see in this part of the world is that it's a place where you see empires come and fall. And you know, we've seen the high point of civilizations like in Samarkand, the Silk Road cities, and the Timurid Empire, and the Greeks and everything like that. And then you see the low watermark of civilizations, and in a way this is really the low watermark of the Soviet ambitions and trying to build mass a prosperous region here, and then seeing those plans collapse into this.
Honestly, I have enjoyed my time here in Uzbekistan. I think that this is a part of the world that gets overlooked quite often, and I doubt most people watching this would be able to find Uzbekistan on a map if given an opportunity. It's been an interesting trip. It's one of like highs and lows, just like you said. You know, we're at a lowest point right now, but we're ending it on a high. I think that it has a ton to offer. This country is beautiful. The people are really friendly, and they're genuinely interested in why you're here. They want to engage with you. They want to know where you're from.
They want to pour you a shot of vodka.
They want to pour you a shot of vodka and take a selfie. And yeah, I mean, I think that this country has so much to offer. This is a place for the traveler that really wants to step out of their comfort zone and take the path less traveled.
We should mention that it's very safe. There is not any concern of security, and it's a really interesting way to access a lot of history and also the culture of the Islamic world. So, what was your favorite place that we went to on this trip?
I really liked, obviously, the Registan in Samarkand was beautiful, but I really enjoyed Bukhara. I found Bukhara to just be super interesting. It felt like kind of Assassin's Creed, and then being able to climb up to the top of the minaret, that was like a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I don't think many people have done that, and I don't think many people are allowed to do that, and somehow we got the golden ticket and we're allowed in there, and I really enjoyed that. The food has been delicious. All of the like minced meat kebabs and the soups and the stews.
I really enjoyed the Shahi Zinda in Samarkand. I thought that was really beautiful. Just the different types of architecture in a small spot. Just seeing all the geometric designs, like for me, like really appreciating the architecture here. And just going through the markets everywhere was just such an interesting insight into like the Silk Road and all that culture that really brought the East and West together. And I think my favorite moment was probably having dinner on Hanukkah with the Bukhari Jewish community. I think that was just like such a historic community that you see more in the United States in the diaspora and people emigrating from here to the United States. But to go back to a place that's been there, like a community that's been there since 1000 BC, was really interesting, and to have a meal with everyone on such a high holy day was quite an experience.